As the administrator of the Galactic Training Academy, Shirola walked through the wide, high-ceilinged corridors, her thoughts growing more intense with each step. The academy was established to train the defenders of the future in a galaxy where peaceful species were the majority. For many years, they had worked on researching the best tactics and strategies that different species could learn from each other. However, increasing threats along the western border of the galaxy made a more effective training approach necessary. That's why they had hired retired human commander Harlan McRae, a man who had survived countless battles and become a legend, as the new combat instructor. While humanity's skills in warfare and ruthless tactics made him a risky choice for the academy, the administration had no other option. When Harlan first appeared before the students in the academy's training arena, a tense silence settled over the room. Dralkins in their semi-transparent armor, Ixla with their smooth skin that reflected different colors of light, and the massive Olarks known for their muscular builds, all awaited the human teacher's first words. Harlan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, pacing slowly in front of the students and scanning their faces. His eyes passed over each gaze, some curious, others cautious, before he turned to the digital board and wrote the word war in large letters. The holographic screen made the word shine brightly. "Do you really know what war is?" Harlan's stern voice echoed. "It's not just about destroying the enemy. War is the brutal art of combining strategy and chaos to survive. You are here to learn the art of war, and as you do, you will either succeed or fall. The choice is yours." Most of the students struggled to compose themselves in the face of this harsh tone, but a Dralkin student named Zalva crossed his arms and spoke up. His thin, high-pitched voice was weak against Harlan's cold tone. "Human, our way of fighting is different from yours. Our bodies, they are not as strong or agile as yours. We have different methods." Harlan stepped closer to Zalva and responded with a faint smile. "If you think your body is a weakness, then you need to learn how to turn it into an advantage. I will teach you to use your differences to your benefit. The nature of war is to push beyond your limits." When the first training session began, the students found themselves in a grueling struggle. Harlan adopted an approach entirely different from standard training methods, pushing each species to their physical and mental limits to prepare them. The first stage focused on combat techniques and close-quarters fighting strategies. For many of the students, this kind of training was nearly torture. Harlan frequently knocked them to the ground, made them crawl, and then had them evade high-speed holographic drones. On the first day, simulations were held in a large holographic battlefield, targeting each species' unique weaknesses. Olarks like Rolgan struggled against small, fast-moving targets due to their massive size. But Harlan taught Rolgan to plant his feet firmly and control the area by taking large strides. "Combine your strength with balance," he said. "Pin the enemy down first, then deliver the blow." For Ixla student Zintha, the situation was different. With 2 arms and a slender build, they were quick and agile, but their lack of strength was a disadvantage in endurance battles. Harlan taught Zintha combat techniques based on swiftly approaching targets and evading attacks. During one simulation, Zintha quickly maneuvered through the drones guided by Harlan's instructions and reached the target. Harlan nodded in approval. "Don't just use your speed for evasion. Use it to gain an advantage during an attack. Be unpredictable." As the training progressed, the challenges the students faced became increasingly difficult. By the end of the second week, Harlan began assigning more personalized and specific training to each student. Some focused on mastering close combat techniques, while others specialized in long-range weaponry and battlefield strategies. The simulations no longer consisted of simple holograms. Real weapons were introduced, and the students learned to apply tactics and strategies against each other in combat. Even when the students were exhausted to the point of collapse, Harlan never allowed them to stop. Real war, Harlan said after a grueling sparring session, as the students struggled to catch their breath, "will not go easy on you. The enemy will show you no mercy. That's why you must increase your endurance. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. Every scar is part of the art of war." In the subsequent sessions, emphasis was placed on the importance of forming tactics and thinking strategically on the battlefield. Harlan created complex scenarios to distract the students and force them to make quick, accurate decisions. He wanted them to act logically during moments of crisis. This approach helped the students understand that war was not just a physical struggle, but a mental one as well. Throughout the training process, Harlan stood before his students as both a teacher and a commander. He frequently pushed them, challenged their limits, but also encouraged them to try again after every failed attempt. They learned to get back up after every fall and restart the fight. Eventually, the students moved past their resistance to Harlan's harsh training style and began to grasp the logic behind it and the art of war itself. None of them doubted Harlan's words any longer. Each day spent in the training ground was honing their ability to face the threats to the galaxy. When they found themselves thrown into real combat, they knew that Harlan's harsh and unforgiving training would give them a better chance of survival. The blaring alarms echoed through the corridors of the Galactic Training Academy, putting everyone on high alert. Holographic information panels flashed red, displaying emergency instructions for all students and staff. A hostile fleet had emerged on the western galactic border. The enemy was none other than the Kragaths, one of the galaxy's most deadly and ruthless species. The Kragaths combined their biological evolution with technological adaptations, allowing them to grow stronger after each battle. On the battlefield, they could integrate captured technology into their bodies, becoming deadlier by the day. The Academy's Defense Council quickly convened and approved sending the students to the front lines. The limited number of defense units required the students to take an active role in the field. For many, this would be their first time in a real combat situation, a true fight for survival. However, Harlan trusted his students. Their rigorous training and his unforgiving tactics had prepared them to face a brutal enemy like the Kragaths. The moment to test their training had arrived. Harlan addressed the students over a holographic war map. The enemy's red blips grew closer to the clusters of friendly ships displayed in blue and gray, signaling the Kragaths' advance. "The enemy is here to disrupt our communication systems and break our coordination. We will inevitably suffer some losses in the initial assault. But our plan is simple: target their weaknesses and turn every advantage in our favor. When we move, you must be flawless." The students were divided into groups, each assigned specific duties. Zintha and Zalva took positions at the forward defense line, while the formidable Olark warrior Rolgan was stationed at the front as part of the shock unit. Each student had to employ the techniques they had learned under Harlan's instruction. The battle had already begun, with the Kragaths clashing against the Academy's defense fleets. As the first wave of the clash erupted, the students found themselves in the midst of chaotic warfare. Long-range energy weapons and explosive munitions crisscrossed the air, while the Kragath ship's powerful electromagnetic pulses disrupted all communication systems. When the small defense unit made up of students encountered the Kragath's armored infantry, the intensity of the battle surged. The Kragath warriors, with their hybrid organic-mechanical forms, presented a lethal threat, a fusion of human and alien, fortified with powerful limbs and armor-plated bodies that could not be easily felled. Zalva, with the agility of his Dralkin species, made the first move. A Kragath warrior raised its heavy metal claws and charged at him. Zalva swiftly dodged, aiming his plasma blades at the creature's joints, where metal met flesh. As sizzling smoke rose from the wound, it was clear that the Kragath's internal organs had been damaged. Yet the enemy was far from defeated. It lifted its claws again, striking at Zalva with renewed speed and fury. He barely managed to pull back in time to avoid the blow. Harlan's voice echoed from the holographic comms amidst the chaos. "Focus on their weak points. Disable their mechanical joints." When Olark warrior Rolgan encountered a massive vanguard unit of Kragaths, he stormed into the battlefield like a beast unleashed. With his powerful muscles, he swung his giant spear, cutting through the first ranks of the enemy. Each blow cracked their armor, sending metallic fragments flying. Rolgan's mighty fists brought some Kragaths to the ground, while others quickly retreated to regroup. However, the Kragaths were not just formidable because of their numbers, but also their ability to adapt. One of the Kragaths Rolgan had struck began to rapidly repair its damaged joints and launched itself at him again. Rolgan instinctively ducked to avoid the creature's claws, then drove his spear into its head with all his strength. Sparks flew from where the Kragatha's mechanical components met its organic parts, a sign that the blow had been effective. But the Kragatha's steel-plated body gripped the spear tightly, pushing Rolgan back. In that moment, Rolgan remembered a technique Harlan had taught, using the enemy's own momentum against it. He released the spear and leapt aside, causing the Kragath to stumble forward under its own weight. As the creature fell to the ground, Rolgan delivered a final strike, neutralizing it completely. Zinther, with his agile frame, wove through the Kragath's battle line, taking advantage of his speed. His two-armed form swung a plasma blade in fluid motions, slicing through Kragath armor. But the enemy quickly adapted, and soon two Kragath warriors launched a coordinated attack. Zinther rolled to the ground to evade the dual strike, and as soon as he stood back up, he struck at the joint of one Kragath. The plasma blade pierced through the armor, causing an internal explosion. With one enemy down, Zinther turned without hesitation to face the next. As the battle grew fiercer, the impact of Harlan's training became increasingly evident. The students were no longer merely defending. They were finding creative ways to counter the Kragath's tactics. Even in moments of crisis, they remained calm, targeting the enemy's weaknesses. Under Harlan's remote guidance, the students quickly adapted to the Kragath's shifting strategies. Meanwhile, Harlan monitored them, intervening whenever necessary. As the fight raged on, the Kragaths made one last push, reaching the Academy's inner defense perimeter. This was the moment when Harlan's students would face their toughest challenge yet. Some students defended a passageway shielded by energy barriers, while others launched offensive maneuvers to halt the Kragath advance. Following Harlan's command, preparations were made for a volley of energy weapons, and a large-scale counterattack commenced. Energy cannons and laser guns tore into Kragath ships and infantry, wreaking havoc among the enemy ranks. However, one of the Kragath leaders, a colossal warrior known as Graka, had transformed into a combat form and charged into the students' midst. Graka was equipped with the combined might of human and alien technologies. Metallic arms swirling around him were armed with lasers and heavy weaponry. His attacks posed a significant threat to Harlan's students. With his massive form and deadly arsenal, he destroyed everything in his path. Energy shields and armored panels crumbled under Graka's assault, and the students fought fiercely to hold their defensive line. Zalva and Zinther rushed to divert Graka's attention, attacking swiftly. Zalva aimed his plasma blades at the creature's mechanical limbs, but the arms were too quick and strong for his strikes to have any effect. Graka struck Zalva with a heavy blow, sending him tumbling back. The Dralkin warrior's breath was knocked out, but he quickly got back on his feet. Meanwhile, Zinther used his speed to move behind Graka, targeting the creature's energy reactor with his plasma blade. The blade penetrated the armor, but Graka swiftly turned, grabbing Zinther and hurling him to the ground. Pain surged through Zinther's body as Graka raised his colossal metallic claws, preparing to deliver the final blow. Just then, Harlan's voice cut through the comms. "Now!" Harlan shouted. The students launched a coordinated attack, just as he had taught them. Rolgan charged forward with all his strength, striking at Graccha's legs with his spear to unbalance the creature. Graccha staggered for a moment, and Zalva seized the opportunity to plunge his plasma blades into one of its arms, rendering it inoperative. With one limb down, Zintha mustered the last of his strength to get up and make another strike at the energy reactor. The energy blade drove deep inside, causing the reactor to sizzle and spark. Smoke and fire erupted from Graccha's body, indicating significant internal damage. The final blow had broken Graccha's power. The giant creature collapsed to its knees, then fell to the ground. Graccha's defeat was a great morale boost for the students. Yet the battle was far from over. Some Kragath units began to retreat, pulling back from the Academy's outer defense zone. The students and defense fleets quickly moved to repel the remaining enemy forces. Harlan's training and strategies had saved their lives in this first major clash with the Kragaths. Thanks to the students' resilience and tactical ingenuity, the Academy had won the battle with minimal losses. As silence finally descended on the battlefield, the students stood exhausted but satisfied by their hard-won victory. Harlan walked among them, placing a hand on Zalva's shoulder. "Well done," he said. "But this is only the beginning. The enemy will return, stronger than ever. We must be prepared." Harlan's strict training and disciplined approach had brought the students face to face with the reality of war, and they had survived. Yet they knew the Kragath threat was far from over. This victory was merely the first step in defending the galaxy. The art of war was shaping them for even greater and more dangerous struggles ahead. Together, Harlan and his students would continue on the path to protect the galaxy. A brief silence had settled over the Galactic Academy following the repulsion of the Kragath threat. However, Harlan knew that this tranquility was deceptive. The Kragaths never just attacked and withdrew. That was not their style. Harlan's foresight proved correct. Intelligence units reported that the enemy was returning with a larger and more organized fleet. This time, the Kragaths were targeting the Academy with a command ship and an elite unit composed of their top warriors. The pressure was on the students. Everyone began preparing for battle under Harlan's new orders. However, this time Harlan's plan was not solely focused on defense. He aimed to find and exploit the enemy's weakest point. The Kragath command ship was covered in massive armor, but its energy transmission systems were relatively vulnerable. If these systems were disabled, the Kragath's coordination capabilities would be severely weakened. Harlan gathered the students in the strategy room and explained the plan using a holographic battle map. "The enemy's command ship is here," he said, marking a large red dot on the map. "Its energy transmission system passes close to this area. Rolgan, Zalva, and Zintha, I'm assigning this critical mission to the three of you. You will infiltrate, disable the system, and disrupt the enemy's coordination. The rest will distract the Kragaths in other areas." After finalizing their plans, the students boarded a small but fast attack vessel and headed toward the Kragath command ship's weak point. Thanks to the ship's radar systems and energy-absorbing coating, they followed a path that the enemy would not detect. When the ship's boarding door opened, Rolgan, Zalva, and Zintha quickly leaped out and secured themselves to the command ship's armored hull with their magnetic boots. The ship's immense structure felt as if it might swallow them whole. As they advanced along the outer surface of the Kragath warship, they occasionally vanished amid the steam and energy lights seeping from cracks in the armor. Upon reaching a specific point, they used a specialized cutting device provided by Harlan to breach the armor and infiltrate the ship. Although the thick metal made the cutting process challenging, they eventually created a narrow passage and slipped inside. The interior of the Kragath ship was equipped with both biomechanical and advanced technology. As they navigated through narrow tunnels and vast ammunition rooms, they encountered enemy patrols. Zalva stealthily advanced and positioned himself behind the first Kragath patrol, swiftly wielding his plasma blades to target the enemy's weak point at the neck. Before the enemy warrior fell, Rolgan and Zintha quickly charged at the other Kragaths. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, and red lights began flashing. The enemy had become aware of their presence, and all attention turned to them. Kragath warriors rapidly filled the corridors, clad in heavy armor and armed with biomechanical weapons. Rolgan skillfully wielded his spear to repel the first wave. Sparks flew as the spearhead pierced through a Kragatha's armor. Zintha, agile as ever, leaped along the walls to evade enemy fire, retaliating with his plasma sword, striking another Kragatha's energy cell. As the enemy wave intensified, Harlan's holographic communication activated. The energy transmission system should be close to your target. Signals are very strong from this area. Hurry, your numbers are about to increase. The trio finally reached the energy transmission room of the ship, where they were met with a formidable defense line. Massive generators controlling the energy flow were protected by numerous Kragath warriors. Zalva quickly devised a plan and signaled to Zintha. I'll distract them while Rolgan approaches the generator. Zintha, you wait for the right moment to cut the reactor connections. Zalva boldly charged at the Kragaths, as energy shields and biomechanical weapons clashed in the air. Plasma blades moved swiftly, and with each strike, the enemy's armor cracked, explosions erupting from the seams of metal and flesh. As Rolgan dispatched several Kragath warriors, he moved closer to the generator, while Zintha targeted the energy connections. However, the Kragaths tightened their defense, and they were under constant fire. When Zintha's energy sword pierced the reactor's connection points, an immediate energy surge rippled through the room. Green lights began flashing on the reactor, signaling a chaotic energy discharge. In a final effort, Rolgan swung his spear with all his strength, plunging it into the heart of the generator. The generator exploded, causing a massive energy detonation. This blast temporarily incapacitated all systems within the ship. With the energy system disabled, the Kragath's coordination abilities were significantly weakened. Chaos reigned inside the ship as Harlan ordered the students to retreat. They needed to return to their attack vessels before the Kragaths could reactivate their defense systems. Amidst the explosions and energy fluctuations, the trio hastily made their way back. Although they encountered a few more Kragath warriors along the way, the enemy could no longer mount an organized defense. Upon reaching their attack vessel, they immediately powered it up and fled from the Kragath ship. The large-scale assault initiated by Harlan and the other students quickly dispersed the remaining enemy forces. The Kragath command ship, rendered inoperative due to system failures and internal explosions, ultimately became a massive wreck. The Academy students had achieved a great victory. After the battle, Harlan surveyed the battlefield with his students. "This is one of the greatest victories we've won," he said. "But remember, this is only the beginning of a larger struggle. Every battle will strengthen and prepare us further. We must be even more determined to defend the galaxy in the wars to come." Harlan's leadership and the courage of the students had protected not only the Academy but also the galaxy. However, the Kragath threat was not entirely over. They knew they would return, and this time they would be better prepared. The art of defending the galaxy would continue to evolve as new warriors were trained. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.